Hi everyone. It's great to be here. Welcome to the last panel for YA ThrillerCon 2022. I know I'm excited to be here, and thank you guys for being a part of it. And thank you to Maddie for putting this all together. I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing everybody. This panel is all about weird things about being an author. So we're going to talk about the weird, the wacky, the random, all the things that people that don't write might not be aware of. So we are also going to do a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you're watching this, you can leave it in the chat, and we'll go ahead and pick some after we get through our main questions to hear from our audience. So yeah, just go ahead and reply, and we'll pick some questions at the end. And now let's introduce our panelists. So I'm just going to go around. Barry, would you like to start and tell everybody who you are?
Sure. Hi, I'm Barry Lyga. I'm the author of 25 novels, mostly for young adults and middle grade. My 26th and 27th will come out in the fall. And I'm probably best known for the I Hunt Killers series, which is probably how Maddie found me for this. My latest book is called Time Will Tell, which came out in September. And I just had an anthology that I edited called Generation Wonder, The New Age of Heroes, which is a superhero anthology written by all sorts of people you wouldn't think would write superhero stuff. And that just came out last month.
Great, thanks. What about you, Kat?
Hi, I'm Kat Ellis. I write horror thrillers mainly for young adults. My most recent one was Wicked Little Deeds, which you can see next to the Fuggle behind me, which was called Burden Falls in the US, and that came out last year.
Okay, Kit?
Hi, everyone. Crick. I am author of 4 YA thrillers so far. Most recently, I can't see the camera correctly. Most recently, Very Bad People, which just came out a couple months ago. And before that, I Killed Zoe Spanos, which came out in 2020. And I'm joining you today from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
And Matt.
Hello, I am Matt Killeen. I am the author of Author Monster Spy and its sequel, Devil Darling Spy. This is the US cover because I just realised it's got all the British ones. It is a story of a Jewish German girl who is orphaned in an escape attempt at the beginning of the Second World War, runs into a British agent, saves him, and then goes to work for him.
Cool. And Savita? Oh, you're muted, so just go ahead and hit yeah.
You think I know how to do that by now? Anyway.
That's all right. Go ahead.
I'm Savita Kalhan, and I write YA, contemporary, gritty, edgy thrillers, as well as dramas. So my books are The Girl in the Broken Mirror and That Asian Kid. And I have stories and anthologies like Stories from the Edge. And my thriller, The Long Weekend, is going to be republished in autumn with a fantastic new cover, and it is very, very scary as well. So that's what I do.
Great. Well, thank you guys all for introducing yourselves. I'll go ahead and just say a little bit about me before we jump into questions. I'm Angelina Singer. I write a collection of young adult thrillers. Well, they're thrillers. Some of them are more romance, contemporary oriented. I have a time travel duology out called The Rewind duology about a girl who goes back in time to meet her younger self and handle her bullies and some old things that she kind of had to heal from. So that was very near and dear to my heart. And then the other things I have is a trilogy that's dystopian, young adult sci-fi, and just a cheesy romance on top of that too. And currently I'm working on a fake dating rocker romance. So I've got a lot of different stuff, and it's great to be here, part of Young Adult ThrillerCon. So let's start with our first question. So I want to ask you guys, and I guess not everyone has to answer, but everybody can answer, obviously, is have any of you been called weird for being a writer, or have people thought you're ridiculous for pursuing it as any kind of career? So
I think I can jump in. I don't think anybody called me weird for being a writer. I think when I became a writer, people went, well, that makes sense because you're weird.
Okay, fair.
I think there's a veneer of respectability about being an author. and that's because people just totally do not understand what it is from the outside. You know, we look all very kind of like Swish and important. I'm an author, I'm a very important person, and they have like no idea what's going on there. And I think part of that is, I know I dismissed my own writing for decades because it didn't feel like a proper career, like, or something that I could do. It was only something for very, very good, important people. And I think particularly in creative industries, there's this idea that anyone can write. You can write something in 5 minutes, you know, it takes you an hour to make a picture or something, 5 minutes to write it. So therefore it has no value. And so when I became a professional writer, it was like the sun came out and picked me out, and it was like, hallelujah, you know, and then I felt weird, and that was good, you know, I think.
I certainly, nobody thought I was weird for being a writer, but as Matt said, you know, I was definitely, most of my life, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a writer since the time I was 6 or 7 years old. And so most of my life was people saying, really? And just, you know, it never felt personal. It never felt like, oh, you're going to be a writer. It just, nobody in my life had any experience making a living at any sort of creative endeavor. So I think it just didn't connect for them. They couldn't imagine how somebody that they knew could possibly do this successfully for a living. And that made it difficult because, you know, when you say this is what I'm going to do and everybody around you goes, really? Huh? How are you going to make that happen? And you're like, I don't know, but I'm going to. It's definitely a very strange feeling.
Yeah, so it sounds like, before I let anyone else continue, it sounds like so far we're saying that it's not that we were weird for writing. It's more like we're already weird and we're just writing about it, which is great. So that's awesome. Love that. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Well, I know people thought I was weird for wanting to be a writer, but actually most people are quite chuffed that they've met a writer when they find out that you're a writer, and they want to have their photograph with you, or like, oh my god, I've met a real life author. But you know they're going to Google you as soon as you walk away, you know, and you're not like a big blockbuster writer or anything. So yeah, there's always a huge amount of surprise, but maybe not so much, weirdness. Yeah.
Yeah, I do seem to get the reaction from people when they find out what kind of books I write. It's like, you know, you tell them, oh, I'm a writer, and they give you that look like you've just told them that you're a unicorn. Like, okay, you're a writer. What sort of books do you write? Yeah. So then I tell them that I write scary books, and they're like, okay, backing away now. So I think that's the point at which they realize how weird I am. So yeah.
You know, normal's overrated. The best people are weird. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, I think a couple of you mentioned or were sort of circling around the distinction between being a writer and doing it professionally and how that can impact others' reactions. I mean, I certainly had the experience when about 6 years ago, I left a full-time desk job that I had. Not to write full-time. I was at that point writing, but also starting an editorial practice. I also worked as an editor for a small press. So I had a sort of like conglomeration of self-employed stuff going on. And that was what I think was a little bit difficult for certainly my family and also some friends to wrap their heads around. And the interesting thing is now, 6 years later, where we're in this environment where so many people are working remotely, you know, a couple of years into the pandemic, and there's just been like a big shift into the gig economy and remote work. It now, I think, seems much less weird to say like, oh, I work from home, I'm self-employed, I have 5 different jobs. And like writing is one of them. And so I think that the world has sort of caught up to my weirdness in that way. But it definitely struck at least some like older adults as odd a few years back to conceptualize this sort of like self-made, self-employed writing as a component of it lifestyle.
Absolutely.
I had been doing it for 6 or 7 years and had published something like 10 books. And my father and my grandfather didn't take it seriously until that 10th book hit the New York Times bestseller list. And then suddenly they were like, "Oh, that's what you do." I'm like, "Yes, it's what I've been doing for years and years and years." And they were
Now
suddenly,
you were
they
legit,
shut up suddenly. What's that?
Now you are legit. I mean, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
no,
Sort of like
Yep,
whether it's like a book contract or hitting a list or like, oh, something's been optioned for film, like what
Yep.
it is that signals to others in your life that like,
Yep.
oh, you're legit now.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
A
okay.
legitimate weirdo. Yeah.
What was that, Matt?
A legitimate weirdo.
Yes, well, you know what? If you can make it backed by monetary proof, that's pretty great. So, love that. Professional weirdo. Great. Let's do a rapid fire round. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, how weird do you think you are and why? So, like 1 or 2 sentences, really quick. I just want to hear everybody's weirdness scale, we'll say.
Okay,
I think I'm
I asked
10.
my friend. Oh, sorry. I asked my friend this question yesterday, and she said you're definitely an 11. I'm like, no, it's 1 to 10. So I think I'm about a 7 or an 8. And I think anyone who wants to write books for a living and wants to put their name on it and wants it read by millions of people has got to be a little bit weird, haven't they?
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm a 10, and I think that part of that is that I'm pretty certain now that I'm neurodivergent, and I have been weird my whole life, and I've not fitted in, and I'm different from other people, and like by the time I kind of reached this age, I was wearing my weirdness like a shield. It's like I am this, and stuff I did sometimes had a little tinge of revenge in there, like I'll show them, and I think but it makes me more creative, but then and free thinking, but I have trouble sleeping, I get upset easily, I had a temper, and I'm lazy, and that's a terrible thing for a writer to be, to have that, to be flaying yourself with that. So I think, again, professionally weird now.
All right, I'll go next because at least on my screen, like if we're going in a circle, I'm next. I don't know if other people have the same view, but I don't know. I think I'm really pretty boring. I'm like probably a 3 on the weirdness scale. I feel like all of my weirdness and creativity really gets channeled into the writing, and as a human, I am not that out there. But it's like rich inner life and like boring exterior. So I don't know, 3 to 4.
Okay.
I think compared to normal human beings, I'm probably around a 10, but compared to other writers, probably a 7 or an 8.
That's true. Could be a different metric. I didn't even think of that. Good point. Good
point.
point.
It all depends on what you're applying the scale to. But yeah, I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
I think I probably land squarely in the middle purely because all of my weird habits connect with writing. So like I like going on road trips to explore cemeteries, and I like going ghost hunting and stuff like that, which is up on the weird end of the spectrum. But then I also have really, really like normal / dull hobbies as well. Like I love gardening and things like that. So it kind of brings me right back down to the middle. So I think that's why I probably land firmly at a 5.
Okay, yeah, no, I totally see that. Everybody's a mix of something, right? So I totally get it. Okay, next question. What's the strangest thing someone has asked you about being a writer? So go ahead and share some really funny stories about what people have said about it.
I'll start. I feel like there are all sorts of misconceptions, right, about any sort of creative career, probably anything that's a little bit off the beaten path. I was trying to think about what some of the weirdest were. One thing that came to me was I've been asked, and it's not the question, but the phrasing of the question. I've been asked, of course, I'm sure we all have been asked about like TV and film adaptations of our work and like, will this ever happen? What is that process like? But I'm always surprised when I get asked that question framed like, would you ever allow one of your books to be made into a movie? As if I might be the gatekeeper between one of my books and like film fame, right? Which could be totally true. Like, it is not an impossible scenario that an author does not want an adaptation to happen and might, like, you know, pull the plug on that for sure. But I just always laugh because I like envision myself as like fielding all of these offers and being like, no, maybe someday there'll be a good enough one. No.
Hey, you gotta dream it so you can do it, right? You gotta have those high goals and just, you know, invite that positivity into your life. So absolutely.
I love it when that question is phrased as either I think you should make a movie of your book, or why haven't you made a movie of your book? And my answer is always because I don't have $100 million.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good answer.
And it just blows, like in this day and age when so much information is available, and we know that on the third Thursday of the month, Tom Hiddleston ate chili for lunch while he was shooting Loki. Like, we know all of this stuff now, that people don't understand that we have nothing to do with it other than saying, yes, you can. Other than that, we have nothing to do with it. And the sort of the annoyance or the frustration or the anger sometimes that I hear from readers, where they're like, why haven't you made a movie of this book? It's like, do you have $100 million? I don't. If I did, I'd do it. And that always blows my mind that people phrase it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Anybody else?
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I got asked after an author talk at a secondary school. A year 10 boy put his hand up and said to me, Miss, what's your net worth? And I was like, oh my, what's my net worth? Seriously, do you really want to know? I said, actually, children's authors
I always
don't
answer that question more than yours.
Yeah, maybe just at that moment, but
I always say more than yours.
That's a good answer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I do think what I was going to say, my answer was going to be when they go, how much money do you make? And like, because I think that is just inappropriate. Like, for a British person, that's like,
Yes.
they might as well be throwing feces at you. And I really can't. But they're always really disappointed when you tell them. I've just started now going into the discounts for Amazon, and it works out like 18p a book or something. And there was this one kid who went, 18p a book? F that. So,
I know. I said 35p a book, and the publisher.
It's a weird question.
The rest, yeah. And they're like, what? So why are you a writer? I thought, yeah, another good question.
Yeah,
I think I've been quite lucky so far. I've never actually been asked how much I make as an author yet, I will say. But it's something that I get asked, I think with every book that I've brought out so far. I've had 5 books out, and with each one I get asked, how much of you is in your main character? And I always find that kind of a weird question, as though it's kind of like semi-autobiographical, bearing in mind that I'm writing horror thrillers. It's like, how bad do you think my life is that I'm like the main character? How much of this stuff do you think I've actually seen in real life? But it's always a fun one to try and sort of think, well, is there some of me in my main character? And I don't think there is, to be honest.
Well, just briefly, I'll weigh in on that question, because this one is something that I've done many times. And it's like, I started writing because I had this crush on this guitarist I met from band camp. Like, I wrote him as a love interest. That is my 19-year-old brain. I own it. It's fine. But from there, I also wrote my duology about time travel, about my younger self dealing with bullies and different things. And so there is an autobiographical element to writing. And I think it's more about like how much we want to admit to ourselves and to others, because like, do you want to reveal that much of yourself? If you do reveal that much of yourself, do you want them to know that you did? That's the key. So it's a balance. So I like your answer, Kat. That was a very good point about how bad do you think things really are, So definitely. Next question. What's the most surprising or unexpected thing you've dealt with as a writer? Maybe it's something in the publishing process, or maybe it's something socially, emotionally. Maybe it changed how you view the world. I don't know. Share something unexpected that came out of it.
I definitely found that it was weird that I wouldn't get to choose the name of my book. I trust my agent, and she said you won't get to, and I was like, and so we're going to change the name now, and I was like, oh, okay, because I trust you. But like, that just seems the weirdest thing, because people identify that with you very strongly. People go, how did you come up with the title? And I go, I don't know. My agent Molly came up with it. Like, I can retcon it. I can say, oh yes, I can see why we chose this, but like, I didn't get to choose that, and that's weird.
That's weird to me, because I've chosen every title. Is that a British publishing thing? The American authors, do you guys pick your titles?
Well, I'm self-published, so don't ask me, because I haven't done the agent thing yet. I want to, so I'm learning from you guys, but I don't know. Yeah,
I can weigh in on that from an American publishing traditional Big Five publishing standpoint, at least. I have had a different experience with different books. For my first two books, the title that I wrote and initially sent to my agent stuck through the whole publishing process and was the title the book was published under. For my third book, which was published under I Killed Zoe Spanos, the original title that it sold under was entirely different. But at the point when it sold, my editor said, probably we're going to want to change this because I can't get a good sense of what the genre of the book is from the title. I had named it after, so there's a creepy gothic house in the book called Windermere, and so that was the title. And I was like, oh, good point. That could be a romance, it could be gothic horror, it could be literally anything. There was no signaling about genre. So we did change it, but she left. It was a collaborative process. She was like, I want to change this. What do you think? And then there was a line at the very end of the first chapter where the main character confesses to this death. And I Killed Zoe Spanos. And I was like, what do you think about this? And she was like, yes, love it. So it was very much both of us weighing in. On my fourth book, I had a really interesting experience where I had sent it in under a title, and my editor was like, I am sorry to tell you that we already have a book signed up at our same small imprint coming out in the following season with a title that only has one word different from this title. And it's also a YA thriller, and it's just too close. And I was like, and then it turned out to be a friend's book, and I was like, okay, I can't be too mad about this. But so I had to go back to the drawing board for this very businessy reason. But again, I came up with the title. It wasn't given to me. I was just told that it needed to change, and then we weighed in. I'm working on a project now where I was working with my agent, and there was this whole list of titles before we went out on submission. I've never seen so many titles generated by other folks weighing in. So that was really interesting. So basically all this to say, I think it can unfold in many different ways. And it probably varies a lot from book to book, even from publisher to publisher.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. It's so funny about your friend with a similar title. Wow. Who knew? What are the odds, right?
I will plug that book for a second. It's Bad Things Happen Here by Rebecca Barrow, and it just came out, and it's really, really, really good. So read Very Bad People, but also read Becky's book. It's excellent.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to share something?
I think for me, it's all the non-writing stuff that we have to do. So I know publishers like you to have a public profile and do Twitter and Instagram. So you end up kind of posting pictures of I learned how to make sourdough during lockdown. And so I end up posting pictures of sourdough and, and my allotment and what I'm growing on my allotment, and just anything to kind of keep public interest and keep followers up. I know some people have not got a contract because they've had no public profile at all with some publishers. So yeah, so that's kind of like a bit weird. I didn't think I'd have to be putting so much of myself out there online.
Well, they want you to market yourself, and so many things we learn on the business side of things is how, to be a creative, you also have to be a content producer as well. Sadly, for some of us, I mean, I'm kind of on the same boat as you, Savita. I've tried to do the TikTok thing. That's a whole separate concept.
Not even go there.
Book talk is hard. We'll say that it's hard to think of things because it's a written platform that we have to put into a video auditory sort of platform. Very difficult. But yeah, so I very much sympathize with that struggle, even though I've tried to dip my toe in when I can. And anyone, maybe one more person for this. We'll move on to the next one after.
Yeah, I'm the same as Savita. I did not anticipate how much, the people skills involved with being a novelist. I mean, I didn't go into this job because I like, being around a lot of people all the time. I'm very much isolated and alone by choice. But yeah, I think one of the weirder things that I didn't anticipate going into becoming an author, and this is a really, really cool thing, is fan art. When people make fan art of your books.
Yeah.
It just never occurred to me that like stories that I'd written would connect with people in that way, that they would feel inspired to create something themselves. So
And
that
fiction.
to me is just mind-blowing and amazing.
Yep.
And kids cosplaying as characters in your book, like that blew my mind, especially this one kid as the bad guy. And I was like, have you read the end of this book? Do you know what kind of person? Yeah, I left him alone.
Wow. Yeah, that's surprising, but fun. I mean, everybody connects to something different, so I'm not surprised. Broaching very smoothly off of this topic, do you draw on your real life inspiration for your books? Like these weird things we've been talking about, can we find anything from your life that you directly was like, you know what, this is so bizarre, I'm just gonna throw it in the book? I mean, I told you already I've done that, so share yours.
Yeah, I have one
absolutely.
example.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Barry. One example that I used in my last book, Harrow Lake, I quite often get sleep paralysis dreams. I don't know if you're all familiar with those, but basically it's like a malfunction while you're sleeping. So you feel like you're dreaming and you're paralyzed in the dream, and something generally quite terrifying is happening to you, and you're trying to wake up and trying to scream, but you can't. Fun times. So I was having this one particular dream where there was this creepy figure approaching the bed and like moving in a very jittery way, and that was the first nugget of inspiration for the baddie in Harrow Lake, Mr. Jitters, who's this like ancient cannibal that came out of the caves. So yeah, that's one real life instance where I did use something I mean, it was a dream, but real
well,
life.
for horror, I'm sorry to hear that you had inspiration, but that's a pretty good one for your genre, so we can't complain too much about how you used it. Sorry that happened, though. Anybody else?
I think we have to draw on real life as inspiration. What else would we draw on?
Yeah, I agree.
It's all we've got. I think the weirdest thing that I actually put into a book was in my very first book, The Astonishing Adventures of Fanboy and Goth Girl. When I was in high school, I had a not terribly great history teacher who was asking us one day, what was the cause of the Great Depression? The single thing that caused the Great Depression. And of course, we had just read that the Great Depression was not caused by any one thing. It was a combination of many factors. And she kept insisting, what was the one thing? What was the one thing? And I don't know what caused me to do this, but I suddenly invented this story about how a bunch of sea turtles had died off the coast of Ecuador in 1928. And I spun this whole story about how that had a ripple effect that impacted all these global economies, blah, 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 and led to the Great Depression. And she totally bought it. I was like, oh yeah, I saw this on the History Channel, and she completely bought it, which taught me a lot right there about how trustworthy and intelligent adults were. And so I put that into Fanboy and Goth Girl word for word. I had the main character in Fanboy and Goth Girl use it, and to this day I have kids who are like, "Oh, you made up the Great Ecuadorian Tortoise Blight of 1928. That was the best thing ever," and it came right out of real life.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting. So you're kind of drawing on multiple sources for your book, and bringing different voices into it. I love that. And by the way, I was really curious while you were talking, so I just looked up your book while you were talking. I really want to read that because I have a punk rock side, as you can tell by the hair, and I play guitar, you know, the whole thing. So I'm gonna read your book. That sounds fantastic. So what's it called? It's called Adventures of Fanboy and Goth Girl.
The
Amazing.
Astonishing Adventures of Fanboy and Goth Girl.
Yeah. I tabbed it over and looked at it.
That was my debut. Yeah.
I was too curious to wait till later. So I'm gonna check it out. That sounds all your books sound amazing, but that sounds hilarious. It's a very particular like young adult trope kind of cheesy thing. It reminds me almost of what was that movie with it's kind of video game like it was sort of a mix of video game aesthetics and also live action, and it was
Scott Pilgrim.
Yes, thank you. Is that a similar vibe to your book?
Maybe it's tough. I mean, Scott Pilgrim had the cross genre and mixed media going for it.
Well, just the tone. Obviously, a book wouldn't have that graphics, but yeah. Okay, cool. I'll have to check that out. I'm definitely gonna follow all you guys on the socials later too, so that'll be good. Great.
I think
go ahead.
also
Go ahead.
Characters, because most of our characters, I think, are kind of based on real people or elements of real people. We have to be very careful how we do that and sort of mix and match a little bit. But I was writing and I needed a character, and in my head, my old Japanese teacher showed up. And I was like, well, I can't base it on you. And in my head, she was like, why not? Why not, Kirin-san? And that was it. And so, like, my Japanese teacher became a lock, stock, and barrel in my book. And at some point, she'll sue me, I'm sure. But
yeah, whatever works. I mean, honestly, nobody here should feel bad, because what I've done is I've rewritten my old middle school bullies as grown-up psychotic criminals who put people into suspended animation for their own nefarious reasons. So I changed their names.
I think we're all working through something.
Yes, we are. And it's funny how writing about this stuff helps us heal. Like, I experienced that like a lot with what I wrote with that concept. So I imagine, hey, maybe you had some vendetta against your Japanese teacher. I don't know. Did you get along? Who knows?
No, she was lovely. And
okay.
Wonderful person.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a place of honor. You'll have to track her down and share it if you can. That'd be cool.
I think it's so interesting what different writers draw from more or less. Like, for instance, for characters, certainly there are elements of some characters that are drawn in some way from real life, but I don't tend to draw a huge amount from real life when doing character construction, because my brain happens to be wired such that I can create a lot of that just, completely from my imagination. But I'm the complete opposite with setting. Like, it's very difficult for me to create a setting that is not in some way drawn from a real place that I have been or experienced. And this is everything from, like, big picture, like I Killed Zoe Spanos is set in the Hamptons, Very Bad People is set at a Catskills, New York boarding school. So it's anything from like big picture to, okay, I need to describe this specific library and what that library looks like, what's in it, what is the spatial orientation, that sort of thing. If I'm just tasked with like blank page, describe that library now, I'm going to super struggle through that process. But if I'm then able to go visit my local library, pull up pictures on Google Images of like, I really want a rare books room, like what could that look like? What could be in that room? Then I'm set. Like I can, as long as I can draw inspiration from real life visuals for setting, then I can fill in the blanks. But without that, it's a really difficult process for me. So I'm curious if anyone else has like something like that, where whether it's character or setting or some other story element where real life is really integral to your creative process.
Definitely. Google Earth and Google Maps are wonderful because you can kind of travel down roads and you can see what this stuff looked like, and you can find towns and then search for that town and then find the pictures from 1930. And it's yeah, we live in a golden age on that front.
Information. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned Google, because that brings me to my next question, which is, what is the most concerning thing you've searched on Google? Because look, hey, we're all writers. I've seen so many memes about, hey, I'm a writer, I promise I'm not going to hurt anybody, I'm just a writer. Like like what are the craziest things you've had to look up? Like not all of us are lucky enough to have doctor friends that can tell us, would this be lethal enough to kill a character? You know what I mean? So tell me, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be anything weird. Share something weird you looked up on Google.
I had to look up for a short story berries. I needed my character to find some berries on the Stones, which is in Shropshire. She's going for a long walk with her husband, and obviously he's the intended recipient of these poisonous berries. So I was doing research on different berries that you can find out in the wild, and she eventually finds these berries called black bryony, which are apparently really highly poisonous, and they are on the Stones in autumn. So I had to adjust my story slightly so that she's there at the right time to get these berries. So yeah, I am constantly Googling weird stuff. I had to actually Google child abuse statistics at one point as well for one of the books that I wrote, and that was pretty disturbing. And and then I was doing some more research for a historical story, and I had to Google Dracula and vampires. And so I don't know, people must think I'm really weird if they looked at my Google history.
Okay, all right, all valid for the writing purposes. Anybody else?
All for the writing purpose.
Yes, of course.
If someone looked at my Google history right now, they would think I was planning a fabulous vacation. I think so we're all thriller writers in some capacity, different subgenres, but like we probably all have the like concealing a dead body or like various murder methods somewhere in our Google history that I'd definitely be interested in hearing people's specifics on that. But I think people would generally think I lead a much more fabulous life than I actually do based on my Google history, because I tend to set books in like settings that are really evocative and interesting to me. And right now I'm writing a book that's set at this luxury resort. So a lot of my Google searches right now have to do with like, okay, like I need to find a map that has this specific element for like this location in the world. So I'm looking for that, or I'm looking for like sunrise and sunset times at like this beach location. So yeah, people would probably think that I travel a lot more than I do. And, I'm looking up like restaurant menus in this area for inspiration, and like names of water parks and all of this stuff. And sadly, it's all for this book.
There is actually a really cool podcast on this very subject called Delete My Browser History. Don't know if any of you listened to it. I was asked on there as a guest author recently, and it's all about authors and the weird things that they Google as they do research for their books. Mm-hmm. So I gave kind of like a 10-minute TED talk about leeches, the very weird habits, feeding practices and breeding habits of leeches, which was something that I was deep into research into for my most recent manuscript that I finished. And a very weird thing that I had to, well, it was weird and quite horrendous actually, Google for my last book, Wicked Little Deeds, was what would an eyeball look like if it had been in icy water for about a week. So, I mean, you can find pictures of that stuff if you look hard enough, not suggesting you should.
So what happens to it? You're holding it up on us, Kat. What happens to the eyeball?
It looks kind of like very milky.
So it's already whitish, so it gets like.
But weird? Even like the colored part, I mean, it goes filmy. Oh. You know what I mean?
Oh, what about the texture? Is that the same too?
I'm not sure about like okay. The mouthfeel. Is this what we're talking about?
No. I meant like like if someone was to like touch it or something. You just made it weirder. I wasn't going.
I love how Angelina's like really specifics about this super gross eyeball now.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I was always a kid in art class that would get grossed out by like touching like even modeling clay or something. But for some reason, as a writer, like it makes you want to know things, like really strange things, because we're so conditioned to be creative, and it's like any little bit of information you can have, like it just helps get in the file, get things rolling, create, no pun intended with the eyeball now. But yes, yes, you're right, Kit. I'm as weird as all of you, so you're in good company, right?
Well, I
Absolutely.
definitely have an FBI file.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
no,
what was that?
Sorry, you go first.
Absolutely. No. I was agreeing with you. We all have FBI files.
Oh, yes,
no
yes.
question.
Yeah.
But beyond just the murder stuff, I mean, the weirdest thing, the thing that would get me looked at askance in polite company, if you looked at my search history right now. So for the book that came out in the fall, Time Will Tell, it's set in the present, but it's also set in 1986. So it's a dual track storyline. And so I was trying to make the 1986 stuff as real as I could. And I was going by memory, but I was also doing a lot of research. And one of the things I was trying to do was show the disconnect between what life was like in 1986, what life is like now. And I was thinking to myself, oh, like there's a scene where this guy finds a porn magazine. And I'm like, oh, like kids wouldn't even understand that now, because if you want porn, you just type porn into your browser. But I wanted everything to be as precise and as exact as possible. So I went down a rabbit hole for about a day of trying to figure out what issue of Playboy would have been on the stands the day my character found it, and exactly who was in it and what were the articles. And like, I'm finding like scans of old Playboy magazines online and go, okay, there's an interview with Billy Joel on page 25. And then you turn the page and there's this naked woman with a wine glass. And like, I'm putting all this into the book. And it was very strange to be spending my time looking at pornography from 35 years ago.
Well, it's interesting they would blend it with like mainstream artists, but then it's also still porn. I don't know. I mean, this is not something I've ever delved into, so I wouldn't know.
That was Playboy, though.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I haven't looked at any of that, so I wouldn't know. But interesting to hear about in the context of writing and cultural contextuality. Interesting stuff.
It was just weird to type,
Everybody read
in 1986.
Yeah.
And you read it for the articles, of course.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay, sure. I want to do one rapid fire question before we open up to our audience. So what's the funniest or most awkward typo you've ever made? Just really quick. What it was supposed to be, what it came out as.
The most awkward one I ever did was the very first sentence of my very first book had a typo in it. Friend of mine came over. I had just gotten the galleys. I was so proud. I gave her a copy of it. She looked at it. She read the first sentence and she goes, "Is it supposed to say this?" And I was like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?"
Oh no.
First sentence of my first book. And it was the weekend, but I called and I left a voicemail for my editor and I'm like, "Oh my God, can we fix it?" We had just enough time to fix it.
Oh,
I couldn't believe it got all the way.
What was the word though? What happened? What would it say?
I don't even remember. There was an extra word. It was supposed to say something like, "I was going to go," and instead it was like, "I was going to go," or something like that.
Yeah, those happen. It's common.
And it was just, I couldn't believe it. After all the work everybody put into this book, the first sentence of the book.
Wow. Oh, that's heartache. Somebody else share one.
In the US edition of my latest book, Burden Falls, at the very beginning, at the dedication, I didn't know this until it was already in print, but for some reason it had been added, the initials KA underneath the dedication, and I'm like, who's KA? Those are not my initials.
Oh no.
So they're in the book.
Did you ever get an explanation for?
I got an apology, but they're still in there.
I don't know. I think word catches most things these days. The red squiggly line is, particularly if you're like me and your spelling is atrocious, like you just let it. But it's always form and from, It's not particularly funny, but it's just really annoying.
Or ta and the, T-E-H and the. Oh, that's a good one. Yep.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the people who write books on their phone, those Japanese authors, because just that ruins everything I ever did. I was having a conversation with another, like a mother on a group chat, and I was talking about a school, And instead of Ofsted, which is the UK government agency that rates schools, I said, "Oh, this school has an outstanding fisting rating," and went out. And then they asked me to leave.
Correct.
No way. What did that appear? Was that in a book? That was in a book.
No, just group chat with a lot of mums.
That's still horrifying. That's oh no. Oh my goodness. Well, I don't think anybody can top that one. So I think we're gonna go ahead and go to our audience now after that. So let's see what the audience is up to. Do you ever? Okay, thanks for this question, Hannah. Do you ever not tell people you're a writer if you're in a hurry and don't want to end up in a long conversation? Ooh, that's a fun one.
No,
I'll go. I mean, I do try to avoid it sometimes.
Yeah.
My wife is always saying to me, "What's wrong with you? Tell people what you do." But you do, like, a lot of times you just start getting all the questions you normally get, and you've answered those questions. I mean, I've been doing this for 17 years. I've answered those questions so many times, and I think it shows when I answer them now. I think my annoyance that I'm answering them again shows, and I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be I asked a guy what he did for a living and he was a dick. So yeah, there are times I try to avoid it. It's tough, usually somebody, "What do you do for a living?" "Oh, I'm self-employed," and then like, "Oh, well, but what do you do?" It's like, "I'm a writer." And then they're, "Oh, what do you write?" And then you have to tell them, and then they ask the questions and you're like, okay.
Yeah, especially because, like me, my day job is content writing and editing. I do edit books for clients. It's embarrassing because, of course, you can't catch every edit in your own book. So it's like, hopefully nobody like reads mine and judges me. I promise I'm a good editor. I did it relatively young, so I'm better now. But it's just funny how it is hard to kind of explain yourself as a writer, whether it's a book or it's content for a company. So I totally relate to that. Yeah, great question. Thank you, Hannah. Anybody else want to weigh in? Or yeah, go ahead.
I'm still sort of newborn as a writer, and therefore I'm just desperately excited. I'm like, yes, I'm a writer.
That's great, though. That's wonderful.
It's so long when people are going, "What do you do?" And I go, "Well, I'm an out of work advertising creative. I go and I work for nothing." And like that was miserable story that I was telling. Whereas now I have that nice, happy story so far to tell people. So I'm too excited to lie. I
okay, that's a good attitude. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll say I teach creative writing. I used to be a teacher anyway of English, so sometimes I'll say that if I'm in a hurry and I want to avoid the whole conversation about, what do you write, and, well, I've heard of you, and what are your books called,
right.
And yeah, I'm sure I've heard of that one. You know that they haven't heard of that one, but anyway.
Yeah, let's hear from another question as we're getting close to the end of our session. Ooh, any weird writer bucket list items? I mean, I think it'd be cool to have a movie of your book. Maybe you guys have different feelings.
But that's not weird.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Weird items. Right. Okay. You're right.
I got on a short list for an award that was like, had an event where, there was a famous newsreader in the corner kind of thing. And that was desperately exciting. But there was a red carpet. And because I hadn't won, they didn't ask me to go down it. So after we hit the bar pretty heavily, me and my editor from Usborne, we like stormed in and took selfies like on the red carpet and made ourselves unpopular. So I have a red carpet photo.
That's epic. So you kind of stole it, but it's still kind of fun. Yeah. That makes it better, right? That's like way more memorable. Yes, absolutely.
I feel like my weird bucket list item is also similarly born out of jealousy. Because I don't write anything that's like super genre, like romance or horror, that I think more often inspires character art and fanfic, like stuff that came up earlier in the conversation. I am desperate to have character art and fanfic of one of my books someday. And as far as I know, this doesn't exist. If it does, and you're watching, please send it to me because I want to see. But yeah, I'm so jealous for fanfic and character art and that sort of thing.
Oh, it's funny actually, because I was as well. And then these two girls who are only about 12 or 13 saw my book trailer, read my book the long weekend, and then filmed a version of the book trailer and themselves acting in it. And it was just
Oh
the
my
most
gosh.
amazing thing. Their mum sent
Wow.
it to me, and I asked, can I use this in schools? Because it's really inspiring. And the kids absolutely love it because it's got a shock horror ending to it, which makes them all like gasp and laugh. And so, yeah, so I've got that. So that's brilliant.
Wow.
Yes.
That's so extra. Oh my goodness. I'm definitely gonna be following all you guys. I gotta like go creep on your content and find out what you've been up to. So now that I'm hearing about all your great books, let's get to at least a couple more questions. So what else do we have from our audience? Weirdest thing you've worried about? Yeah, no, I have literally been kept up at night. Like, what if my bullies find out what I wrote them as? That's mine. But you guys go ahead. Had to say it.
I think
Oh, go
lots
ahead.
of time. Sorry, go on. Oh, well, you go.
No,
you go.
you. After you, Alphonse.
I was just saying we did it again.
We did
All
it
right,
again.
I'm
going to mute myself. Go ahead.
Okay, Matt, you talk. I'm making the executive decision.
I'm sorry. Kit, a lot of time spent looking at tides and weather and sunsets and moon phases, and that's just like not what I thought I was going to be doing with my life, I think.
Okay.
I mean, the weirdest thing I've worried about was my first book. Before chapter 1, there's like a little epigram right at the beginning, a 1-sentence thing there. And the very first time I was signing, my publisher had me sign a couple, like 200 copies of the book for an event they were going to do. And I opened the book the first time, and I guess the static or something from the cover pulled open that first page. So it opened to chapter 1 as opposed to opening to the epigram. And I freaked out that people were going to miss the epigram when they read my book, that they were going to open the book. And I'm saying to my publisher, what do we do about this? They're like, calm down. It's all good. And for some reason, that just completely like stressed me out for the whole day that people were going to not have the proper reading experience.
Okay.
So yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So I worried about my signature, how to sign books when you're signing. And I actually changed it. 5 years after signing books, I decided I was going to change my signature. And I was thinking, is that going to disturb some people that actually now they're still going to think it's me, that I'm changing my signature completely? So yeah, that worried me.
I've heard of people doing that for legal reasons, which like I use my legal signature. I really shouldn't, but I just don't. It's weird for me to like fake a different one. Like I guess I could do initials. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like you can't live life in fear. You got to just roll forward, keep doing what you're doing. Let's get to another question. I love these audience participation ones. Missed the first part of this panel. What are you saying, people? Carly, that's great. No apology needed. I haven't read Harry Potter, so stone me, but this is a great question still. So go ahead.
Yeah, no. I don't write fantasy.
Yeah.
No, but like more broadly, when people ask, like, will I have read something that you write? Or, like they're basically asking, like, have you written something really big and famous that I would know? Like that variation of this question. I certainly get that a lot. We probably all do. And my response to that is always, oh, well, do you read a lot of young adult mysteries and thrillers? And then based on their, like usually it's like, oh, no. And then I can say, oh, well, then probably not. But I have 4 books out. Like you can blah, 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 blah. Here's where you can find them. But occasionally if they then say like, yes, or like, oh, my daughter does, or whatever, then I will say, oh, well, maybe. And, go from there. But I try to reframe the question in like realistic terms so that we can have a real conversation about it that might lead to them finding my books that doesn't just make me feel like crap, where I'm like, no, because I'm not actually J.K. Rowling or thank goodness, or James Patterson or whomever. So yeah, that's how I deal with that.
Great.
I think if you're
go ahead, Matt.
I think if you are in a generous place, it's usually a question that comes from somebody who has really no idea what it is you do, and they are trying. And you can encourage them a little bit. Usually you just go, well, okay, I'm speaking to this person at a wedding. I'm not going to be speaking to this person all night, so it's going to be okay. Just like to try and to take it in the spirit that it was meant, I think, generally speaking, as much as possible. But then again, I'm not always in the most generous place.
Nope, that's very good. That's advice to live by.
Yeah, you can't give everything to everyone all the time. You'll have nothing left. So you gotta have balance. Let's handle one more question from the audience before we wrap up. Weird writing routines. Ooh, great question, Nick. All right, everybody, go for it. All right, I'll start. I'll say I have to watch YouTube videos of bands' music crap for a good 20 minutes before I focus. It helps me, being a musician, I very much attribute music with my writing and the tone of the character. So even if it's random punk rock stuff I listen to anyway, it helps me focus. And I listen to music or ocean sounds while I write. So that's my weird thing.
I'm going to jump in there because I'm the exact opposite. So I feel
okay.
Natural progression.
Yes.
I need monastic silence when writing, which is not usually actually possible, but I get really distracted by anything with lyrics. If there's too much the TV's on the background or whatever, it's like shiny object. So I really need silence as much as possible when writing.
That's why I love the white noise rain or waves. I do that when I do my work for work too, so it helps me focus. Yeah.
I thought I didn't have anything, but then I realized I think I've written everything I've ever published with the same keyboard. I've changed my computer, any number of times in the past 25 years. But my keyboard is about 23 years old at this point, I guess.
Wow.
And I think it might be magic. And I think when it breaks, my career is over. And that's so. That's. I think that's probably the weird thing. Yeah, other keyboards just feel weird and strange, and I don't like them. But this one keyboard is just the perfect keyboard for. You see, I'm doing it. The perfect keyboard for my fingers. And if I have another keyboard, it's not happening that day. The words are not coming that day.
Interesting. It's like lucky socks for a sporting event. I get you. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody
I love superstitious things like that.
Yeah.
I don't have any of my own, but my one habit that I have to maintain to write is that I do writing sprints, virtual writing sprints with another author, Dawn Kurtagich, and we do this every single weekday afternoon because I find that I am such a procrastinator that I will not sit down and write unless she is on the screen watching me. So we do this for each other, just keep each other accountable. So
that's
I think
awesome.
That's my one weird habit.
Yeah, no, I would love to have accountability partners. I don't write as much as I should, so that would be great. I should get into that more often. But all right, guys, we got to wrap up. I want everyone to go around and quickly say where can people find your books. So let's get to your socials really quick.
I'm at barrylyga.com. I'm on Twitter at barrylyga, and that's it. Simple as that.
Okay.
I'm catelliswrites.com. All my socials are linked from there.
I'm on savitakalhan.com, and my books are in Amazon and most bookshops. Twitter is at Savita Kalhan, so quite easy.
I'm on a Twitter break, but I am at @by_Matt_Killeen, and also I'm getting back into Instagram. And you can get books if you try to buy them from a bricks and mortar bookshop if you possibly can. And I guess Barnes and Noble in the US, that means.
My website is kitfrick.com. I am at kitfrick on Twitter and Instagram. And on my website, you can find book pages for each of my books that contain retailer links to all sorts of different places where you can purchase.
I have to ask you, Kit, is that your legal last name? Because that's that's insanely cool. Like, that's so ridiculously cool.
It is my legal last name. Yep.
Wow, love that.
But it's not like a pen name. It's the name I go by in real life.
That's great. No, that's what people remember. So we love that. You guys are all wonderful authors. I can't wait to look into your work. I'm Angelina Singer Author. Angelina Singer at Angelina Singer Author. Instagram. My Twitter, I think, is at asinger320. It was like a different thing, but I use it for art and writing. So all that. My website is angelinasinger.com for freelance, and my blog is angelinasingerauthor.wordpress.com. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate chatting with you guys. Thank you to Madeline Dyer for putting this amazing young adult thriller con together. Like, she's amazing. Gosh. All right, I'm signing off. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Maddie. And this has been YA ThrillerCon 2022. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.